Welcome to
Spread the Word!
All right, we're just going to dive right in.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go first, if that is okay, everybody.
Yes, please.
Okay. This month I read Ikenga. I don't want to mispronounce their name. Nnedi Okorafor.
She wrote Okada Witch and Binti.
So the book opens the morning of the main character Nnedi's father's funeral. Mm-hmm. His father was the chief of police in a small town in Nigeria, Kalaria, and his father was murdered. And you're opening at the funeral, in preparation for the funeral, and you see a procession of basically mob bosses from different sects of the Kalaria mafia, basically. Or not mafia, it's like a loose connection of just crime bosses. And they are coming to pay their respects to Nnedi's father. And it's just like everyone knows that one of these crime bosses in particular most definitely killed his father.
Oh, it's awkward.
It's awkward, it's rude.
Yeah.
It's terrible. One of the crime boss in question, who actually left a note for Nnedi on the night his father died, preempting Nnedi even knowing his father had died.
Okay, so this is not a I'm trying to hide the fact that I did it. This is me rubbing it in your face.
So Nnedi that night vows, he's like, I'm going to kill you. So Kalaria is like a it's a suburb. It's like a typical. It's a suburb. They have all the things the suburbs have, but they also have this rampant crime. And so then you flash forward to a year later. Nnedi has not killed this random crime boss because he's 11. Of course he doesn't. He feels like he is a failure of a son because he's not providing for her. You're a child, of course you're not providing for her. But he feels so responsible for this. And after a series of interactions, he comes upon the spirit of his father, who imparts to him this thing called an Ikenga. And it takes the form of like a book-shaped object. It's not a book. It's a thing. And it transforms him into a very large, imposing man who's very dark. There is a whole lot of colorism in this narrative that was really interesting to see, written from a child's perspective. But so he is a very large, very, very large man who seems invincible. And at first he's confused, and then he basically becomes a vigilante.
This is fun.
Interesting.
Yeah. And his best friend is a young girl, and she's great. And they she goes along for the ride at some point, but she has she's very much a voice of reason in the book. They have there's so many hijinks, and it's there's all of these different neighborhood and family dynamics, and then also this layer of magic and a kid. Imagine being 11 years old and then all of a sudden being a grown, very strong, 30-year-old man who also has hyper perception, but no ability to drive, no knowledge of it.
Yeah. No adult experience.
No
really,
adult
besides
experience.
Your father dying.
Yeah. No understanding of the way that adults communicate beyond what you've seen. And you just decide you're gonna take on all of the crime lords of Kalaria, including a woman who very much seems like a witch.
That sounds.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. I was so impressed with it. Just as far as a book for middle grade readers, sometimes I find myself having to make adjustments in my own reading for an adult audience, and I didn't feel that way at all in this.
She does a really great job of writing mature 11-year-olds.
Yes.
Really great.
But realistic.
Yeah, it's just you're reading an 11-year-old who is an 11-year-old who is more emotionally mature than your average 11-year-old. She's really good at writing that, which is great because I, like you, struggle with middle grade for that reason, where I just have trouble with the voice. I just think that she does a really great job at that.
If you enjoy suspenseful books, if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy international fiction, because it takes place in Nigeria. Like there's a lot of interesting like dynamics of like suburban Nigeria that I just found, I had never thought about. It's a spectacular book. I would recommend it to everybody.
I read I Am the Rage. It's a book of poetry. It's the first, I don't think we've ever reviewed poetry on Spread the Word.
That's true, we haven't.
So mine's going to be really short because it is a book of poetry. There's not a lot. I can talk about the themes throughout and the feeling, but other than that, no narrative to speak of.
Yeah.
Obviously. The title, I Am the Rage, is very indicative of what is happening in this book. I'm very picky about poetry, and I liked it. So, which, by the way, Julia is a poet. Anyway. Just a plug.
Indeed.
And
need a poem?
I feel like
Ask
that's
Julia.
a stretch at this time in my life, but...
once a poet, always a poet. It's like alcoholism.
Apt.
In many ways. The title, I Am the Rage, is very indicative of what is happening in this book, in this poetry collection. The first poem is the title poem, I believe. And I loved it. It just sucks you in. And again, it's really hard to talk about. In that first poem, she's touching on everything. She's touching on like past, present, future, how we are where we are now, and talking about how she feels about that. So after that first poem, the poems after are really heavy in kind of the mother-child relationship. So she's talking about how mothers are feeling when their child or their children are out in the world with police brutality and racism, and how that makes them feel.
And like thinking about the idea of like of motherhood and or parenting, even just being a common unifying force, I think is really, really powerful.
And you have to think about it like just thinking about mothers in general. It's very much like, it's like my heart is living outside of my body and I have to and it's just out there and I don't know what's happening. Exposed, vulnerable. Then you add an extra layer, a very thick extra layer of racist bullshit, and you have this anxiety doesn't even begin. Terror is the word. But another thing to note about this book is when she writes the poetry, she capitalizes you, so she's talking to you as a white person, or as like the white like society.
Like this is specifically written to white people.
Yes, yeah. And she also, there's one poem where she's talking about, she says you as in like a friend who means well, somebody who's like, I'm your black friend, like I've checked that box off for you, that kind of thing.
That is so just that is so compelling. It's just so smart.
It is very worth reading, I think.
I'm never gonna get over that. That's just so tongue-in-cheek and intelligent and emotionally just like a punch.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so I read this month Milk, Blood, Heat. It is a short story collection by Dantiel W. Moniz. Love the cover.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it's, I believe, her first short story collection. One of the reasons I wanted to pick it up was because Lauren Groff blurbed it, and I do love her books. And it is in this, like, literary tradition of Florida is weird. Which Lauren Groff and, like,
Karen Russell?
Yes, Karen Russell are in. It's hard to talk about short story collections because it's, like, not a whole thing.
Yeah.
But there are, like, themes running through it. The first story, which the book is, the collection's named after, Milk, Blood, Heat, is about two friends who, you know, like, when you grow up and, like, the first, like, really close friend you make, and y'all do, like, weird things together. But one of the things they become sort of fascinated with is death, and...
I mean, it's true.
Yeah, death, and they both have, it seems like, issues with depression. They're quite young. And so one of the things that they spend their time doing is saying, you know, when you're, like, a bit older, and you're like, you know, would you sleep with this dude? And you're like, oh, what would that be like? But they do it with death. They're like, what do you think it'd feel like to drown? And, like, what do you think it'd feel like to step in front of a car? And so the whole time you're reading the story, you're like, so dark, but you're also like, they're young and they're like playing, so like, how is this gonna come into play? And so, like, the whole time you're reading it,
Suspense.
you're sort of on the edge of your seat, like, someone's gonna die, and I
Oh,
don't know who it is. So, yeah, that's how the collection opens. I mean, I think that's the nice thing about short stories. You veer into people's, like, little segments of lives. And one of them reminded me a little bit of My Dark Vanessa. Because there's this one that there's, like, a suggestion of a teacher-student relationship that the mom finds out about. I think that maybe one of the themes running through it is sort of these questions of, like, what are these bad thoughts?
Morality.
People have.
Like intrusive thoughts and what?
Yeah. There are some not so terrible stories, like dark. There are some stories where characters actually make some redeeming decisions. I mean.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued just by the first one.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't want to say what happens in, because that one is sort of like a hook.
Yeah, and the first one, so you hit the ground running.
Yeah. You're like, whoa, that's okay.
I'm going to continue on.
Here we are. Short stories are great, though, because you can finish one and like, quickly, and, like, you know, it's that done. I heard, what was it? I was on the call this week with the PRH thing, the Penguin Random House, like, early event for some of their authors, and one of the authors was being, like, she's like a young child, so she's been reading a lot of short stories, and sometimes if her child just, like, sleeps in late one day, she can, like, finish one, and then she's like, it's nice because you finish a short story at the beginning of the day, you spend the whole day thinking about it, and, like, it's still, like, when you're cooking dinner for your family later, you're, like, having these thoughts about what it percolated, and that's true, I think.
Yeah.
It's almost better than rushing through a bunch of them at once.
Yeah.
So.
It sounds good. So, that was Spread the Word.
What episode are we on?
Oh, God. Episode 6 or 7?
Of season
2.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Oh, right. Yes.
Anyway. We have to sing something because Amy mentioned it. Yeah.
Oh,
what do we sing? What's on theme?
But some Britney song. Which one, though? There's so many.
There's so many. But all I really want is to hold you tight, treat you right, be with you day and night. Baby, all I need is time.
Why is that the one we settled on?
I don't know.